It's time we once again put science at the top of our agenda.
E equals
scientists
MC.
from all over the world.
That's the solar system grabbing you by the throat.
Extraordinary creature is half blind, half deaf.
Every living thing are made of star stuff.
Hello and welcome to Science on Top, episode 144. Today is Thursday, the 17th of April, 2014. I'm Ed Brown, and as you can maybe tell, I'm battling that most horrific of life-threatening ailments, the most draining and exhausting illness ever known. What's it called, Penny?
Man flu.
Man flu. So I apologise if I've got a bit of a croak, but I shall live. Thanks for your prayers.
You'll battle on it.
Support society.
So joining me today, as always, is Dr. Shane Joseph and Penny Dumsday.
Hello.
Dr. Kate Norton.
Hello.
And Lucas Randall.
Hello.
So let's start off with a really cool story about a massive asteroid, because I think we're all familiar with the idea of plate tectonics, but I've never actually thought about how did all these cracks in the Earth's crust actually happen. And there's a team at Stanford University, Penny, that have a theory that it's all because of a great massive asteroid.
Yeah, so this is an asteroid that would have hit about 3.26 billion years ago. So
I love that. Roughly 3.26.
A bloody long time ago. Yeah.
Life started, I think, about 3.8 billion years ago. Is that right? So there was a few bacteria around having a look, but nothing much else.
A few bacteria, come on.
Okay, so the world was swarming with bacteria. So this is really cool. This asteroid is just 37 kilometres wide at least. So for a bit of perspective, Mount Everest is less than 9 kilometres tall. So we're talking about something that is multiple Mount Everests high.
And also, apparently, the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs about 125 million years ago, or maybe less.
65 million.
Half that, whatever. Anyway, that was about 10 kilometres in diameter.
Yeah. Like a little baby asteroid. So this is pretty cool because what they've found is in some of the really old greenstone belts called the Barberton Greenstone Belt, and these are the most ancient rocks on Earth, is little spherical rocks, which were probably little bits of rock that were thrown up during the eruption, which probably ended up causing volcanic activity as well. So they got thrown up into the atmosphere, then they cooled, and then they fell to the bottom of the ocean. So these little rocks are all that remains of the impact. We can't find a crater anywhere. So, but looking at that, they've been able to they've been able to calculate how large the asteroid was.
So is it sort of, when you say rocks, is it kind of like a ripple sort of thing of where they would have fallen, like a big ring sort of?
No, I don't think so. I think they were unable to map, I don't think they've actually been able to find the crater in these belts.
Yeah, I don't know actually where it would.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the pattern of the rocks dispersing. Is that sort of one indication, or?
Well, these rocks were thrown up into the atmosphere, and they actually circled the Earth at least once before they would have eventually fallen down to the ground. So there's no way to actually know where they originated from.
That must have been one hell of an eruption.
Well, it was. I think it caused 10.8 magnitude earthquakes, which are about 100 times the size of the 2011 Japanese earthquake that knocked out the Fukushima power plant. So, yeah, a huge explosion.
Apparently also when all these little rocks re-entered the atmosphere, the temperature increased to an extent that would have caused the tops of the oceans to boil.
So these rocks, they actually got re-entry.
Yeah, they re-entered and heated up.
And what made the oceans boil?
Awesome.
Yes. Well,
crap.
Well, the top of them anyway.
Yeah, okay.
The top a little bit
yeah, but
metal, doesn't it?
Hardly any ocean boiling. But yeah.
Wow.
That is insane.
What I think is really cool, it's really cool to think about this huge impact, But what I think is amazing is the suggestion that the authors have made that this might have started tectonic movement. So when you think about the continents, everyone probably has seen some kind of animation of the continents moving around, and there's one floating around which my students love, which shows Australia just crashing into Southeast Asia over the next, 100 million years. But
We're invading this time.
they're like, so we could just walk to China. I'm like,
Oh, God.
if you wait 200 years, you really could. But the reason that they move is that the mantle, so the hot mantle, has convection currents in it, which seem to move the plates. So the rocks in the mantle are moving around, and the plates move on top of them. There might be other forces involved, but that's probably the major one. However, all the rocky planets, so Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, have this structure of a core and a mantle, but Earth's the only one that seems to move. And it could be that even though other planets have this same structure, we had to have something that sort of set this going. So the crust itself had to become destabilized in order to allow it to move on the mantle. And they've suggested that it's possible that this asteroid impact could have been the one that started off plate tectonics, essentially.
Well, that's also suggesting that no other massive asteroids hit the other planets.
Or if they did, they didn't have this particular effect. I don't know.
Maybe.
Or, maybe Earth was the exact right temperature at the right time. But I just think this is just so cool. Oh, by the way, if they could find the crater, it would have been 500 kilometres wide.
So hard to miss that.
So possibly somewhere in the ocean, basically.
Yeah,
could be.
That would make sense.
Yeah, or parts of it
the other thing is the oceans that are there now would not have been there then. We know a lot of the oceans are now land and vice versa.
Yeah.
But
I mean the actual crater now. Whatever's remaining of it would probably be underwater.
Certainly,
by sort of average.
Some of it might be.
Some of it might be. I mean, 500k is quite a big sized crater, but you've got to think.
I think that's the point. Yeah.
You've got to think also that there'd be very little left of the Earth's surface still at the surface after that period of time.
Yeah.
Erosion and constant movement and eruptions and all sorts of things.
And anything that's there is going to be all twisted and bent anyway.
Yeah. We've got
I'm sort of thinking. Sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I'm sort of thinking that if that's the point where the asteroid hit, that would be where a lot of what you would think your cracks would start. She says, I'm visualizing this in a kind of a hitting a chocolate muffin kind of way. And so you'd have bits of the impact ending up on different continents, or any evidence of the impact would end up on different plates.
Yeah.
Because you've hit the cracks and now everything's moving around.
Yeah,
but I mean, since that time, we've gone through at least 2 supercontinent phases that we know of. So all of the continents were joined together. So wherever it was might have no bearing whatsoever on where the evidence of it is now.
And there's so few rocks left from that time.
Yeah.
We've recycled a lot of ocean floor since then as well.
Yeah.
But we do know that the other rocky planets do have some seismic, there's the word, some seismic activity. I think obviously Mars has had lots of volcanic eruptions.
Yeah.
It's got the largest.
Yeah, the largest volcano in the solar system. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. We also know that with Venus as well.
Yeah,
a lot of the problems with its atmosphere came from volcanoes throwing up greenhouse gases and everything. Yep. But I guess it's the actual, the moving plates. Is this theory, do you know, Penny, are they saying that the cracks in the plates were caused by the asteroid, or it just sort of gave them a push and set them moving around?
I think,
or we don't know.
Look, I don't know if they're saying that the cracks were caused. I haven't got access to the full article.
That's the that I got.
But
that, it was all one big crust, and then all of a sudden this asteroid came and just basically cracked it.
Cracked the egg.
And then caused fractures everywhere, and that's still the case today, obviously, because they've moved around and all the rest of it.
And then they can move on the mantle. Yeah.
Which is, so cool, but so terrifying at the same time.
Look, there's a handful of people who are looking for new asteroids that can come in here. This will be fine.
We've only got, that much sky that's, and a hostile universe is throwing crap at us. That's fine. We'll be okay.
And no resources at all or plan on dealing with anything that
we'll have a great view.
Oh, yeah.
Way. Like, hey, there's a big 40-kilometre rock approaching us. See you guys.
So this impact obviously was at the sort of roughly at the end of the great bombardment period of the solar system's formation. So as someone mentioned before, all of the inner planets would have been whacked with stuff, during this period of time. But it might have been a combination of the size of Earth, how long it had been cooling, the thickness of its crust, how much heat was trapped, all of these factors together with this massive impactor hitting it that might have led to, the plates destabilizing as we know them. And there might not have been a similar event at the right time on the other planets for their sort of evolution, if you like. But I still love the thought of an asteroid hitting that was, the outer edge of the asteroid would have been sticking out of the upper atmosphere as its bottom edge hit.
You're not helping, Lucas. You're not helping at all.
72,000 kilometres an hour. I mean, that's
pretty quick,
pretty rapid.
Yeah, you're not going to see that one coming.
Well, now you would, obviously, because at least we're looking.
Well, only if you're looking.
Only if you're exactly.
It'd be pretty hard to miss something that big. Even though we're not watching the whole sky, there's amateur astronomers are always on the lookout for stuff.
Oh,
Someone would pick that up.
Yeah.
So Sven in Sweden will be like, "Oh God, there's an asteroid." Oh,
yeah,
oops, bang, yeah, awesome.
Oh yeah, but I mean,
well, he'd have time to be very concerned.
We'd spot that from a fair way away, and we'd have time to get Bruce Willis up there with a drill.
Yeah. This is not helping.
Yeah, now we're really screwed. Thanks, Lucas.
There'd be nukes involved for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of ancient and frightening things, let's talk about the fossilized daddy longlegs that had the extra set of eyes.
I'm not going to get it.
Kate, did you want to talk about this?
I will talk about this. I will preface this with saying I'm not actually so much of a fan of spiders as such, but daddy longlegs don't bother me in the same way.
They're still 8-legged freaks. I don't care.
There are many 8-legged freaks. That's true, but they're the least terror. That's true. There's a lot of marine ones.
8-legged freak I like are tardigrades. They're the only ones I can cope with. The rest of them, no. Go.
What about octopus?
Octopuses?
Oh, okay, octopus is fine. Tardigrades and octopus.
They're awesome. What's wrong with crabs anyway? They taste yummy.
I don't think of them as
crabs as well. No, they're definitely 8-legged. Oh no, they're decapods. They've got 10 because you have to count the.
Oh, see, that's just unnatural.
Yeah, decapod crustaceans. That's not a diverse group.
Spiders, Kate.
Spiders, sorry. Back to the spiders. Okay, so apparently they're also known as harvestmen, and this solves a question for me every time I encounter an invertebrate biology textbook as to what exactly a harvestman is. To my surprise, finding that they're actually more closely related to mites and ticks and scorpions than to spiders. So I'm not sure if that's any comfort for any arachnophobes out there, from a taxonomic perspective. But it is interesting. I find it interesting. I'm a taxonomist.
How closely related? Like, how far are they from the rest of the spider group? Are we talking?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, they're all arachnids.
Yeah.
They're all chaliterates.
They're about 6.
6.
I'm not sure what Shane's looking for, but we'll just.
No, I'm sort of
6 degrees of separation. What?
Like how? I don't know. Like.
Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that one, but I'm reasonably sure I can find out. Okay, so the interesting thing that has happened recently is they've discovered a fossil daddy longlegs, which is something of a surprise since apparently terrestrial arthropods are chitinous critters such as crustaceans and insects and arachnids. They don't fossilize very well, and especially things on that size are often easily missed, but they've found a fossil daddy longlegs from the Carboniferous period, and they've scanned it using X-ray techniques, and much to their surprise, it doesn't look exactly like you'd expect daddy longlegs to look. So one of the really creepy things about spiders, in my humble opinion, is they've got 8 eyes. Why do they need so many? It doesn't make any sense to me. Moving on. Harvestmen, the daddy longlegs, is much more restrained and only has the two. Mites also have two. So your daddy
Two
longlegs,
eyes, one pair of eyes.
two eyes, one pair of. Mites have eyes, what they call lateral eyes. They're sort of one on either side of the head, I guess you call it, anterior portion of the animal. And then your daddy longlegs have two right in the front, which as a human I think is a good normal place to have eyes. This fossil arachnid had both sets. It had four eyes. It doesn't have the 8 eyes of the creepy spiders, but it has the front eyes of other daddy longlegs, and it has the lateral eyes of the mites.
Okay.
So the question there, with having its extra ancestral,
So sort of like how birds have one eye on either side.
yeah,
It had that plus two in the middle to look straight ahead.
yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
That's very.
It had all four. So the question there, okay, from a taxonomics perspective, they were like, well, crap. Now we're confused because this whole eyes on the side is a taxonomic definitive character of mites, and eyes on the front is a reasonably taxonomic definitive character of these harvestmen. Where are we going to put this one? So what they did in order to try
first world problem, isn't it?
No, these are important questions that, it's all base knowledge. So then in order to work this out, they decided to go back and look at extant harvestmen daddy longlegs, and they went and looked at their genes and their embryonic development to try and work out whether they'd always just had these two front eyes, and what the ancestral form might have been between mites and daddy longlegs. And the embryonic spiders, which, by the way, there are photos in the paper, and I'm just going to say it now. I know I said it earlier off recording, but they are super cute. They're like little balls of pink Play-Doh.
No.
Little tiny, stubby little pipe cleaner legs and black dots like you'd put on a
You cannot call anything spider cute. It does not compute.
Shane, you haven't actually seen the photos.
I don't care.
It's like little...
I'm making a snap judgment, God damn it.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
All right. Well, anyway, the adorable embryonic harvestmen, who are not spiders, actually start to develop these sort of lateral dots, and then they lose them. So much in the same way that we have gills, it looks like at some point they had four eyes, and then
wait, we have gills
as embryos.
Vestigial gills, no, yeah.
Vestigial gills. They're not functional gills. Yeah. Like we've got a postanal tail
on the neck, like Waterworld.
Like Kevin Costner, Ed. Like Kevin Costner. Yeah.
Yes, as an embryo, you looked like Kevin Costner. No one wanted to tell you.
That'd probably be right.
Weren't going to bring it up.
Sorry, I
That's okay.
waylaid the conversation a little bit there. But go on.
Hey, I think that's important stuff. We've got a whole bunch of vestigial characteristics. So gills, we've got a postanal tail. There's a few other things, but basically those are things that we don't hold on to. We go through a developmental phase of briefly having them, and then it all just gets switched off and resorbed. And that seems to be what's happens to these lateral eye domains. And so basically what happens is we've got the little daddy longlegs that we have now have these remnant genes for producing eye stalks, where normally you wouldn't have eyes for a daddy longlegs. And we've got the fossil that shows them actually having all four eyes. So, I think that's a pretty cool character. And what they've ended up deciding is that, you know what, we just can't use eye number as a taxonomic character because it's too labor. It changes so much in these
animals.
That's a
nice sort of story, though, about sort of transitioning forms and all the rest of it.
That's true. Yeah.
And I'm looking at this picture, and Kate, no, it doesn't look cute. It looks like a weird little Japanese animation with.
You don't think that the first? What about the first one? Figure 4A.
Yeah, I'm looking at Figure 4A, and it just kind of it doesn't look like anything. It looks like I don't know what it looks like.
Little pipe cleaner legs and little textured eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm still a bit weirded out.
Obviously, beauty or adorably ugly is in the eye of the beholder. But it is important study, and it is really good to. I work on a group of animals where it's not always easy to find fossils and ancestral forms, and you end up having to try and make a whole bunch of assumptions. But it's really nice to see this sort of transition, and especially looking at the modern day genetics and the remnants of the expressed genes in there. And they did a bunch of gene expression studies too, which are really cool, but we probably don't have time to go into that.
I mean, we've talked a lot before about just how difficult it is sometimes breaking things up into taxonomical categories and dividing them, and particularly when you get to bacteria and other single-celled organisms,
It is the imposition of water.
that can just be a nightmare. But I really love in this how they've actually they've found the fossil, and then they've actually gone and looked at the genetics of it all, and they've traced the genes for the old vestigial eyes and everything. It's just mind-boggling awesome. Now how much we can do with genetics.
Well,
and how much that
sadly, they couldn't get DNA out of a Carboniferous fossil. Were that something they could do, that would be awesome. But actually taking what we have now and extrapolating that backwards, particularly when you can throw in that morphological data from a fossil and then sort of try and build some probabilistic relationships and analyses, then you get some really good results.
Awesome. All right, Lucas, we've often talked about the evidence that Mars had water and that could have possibly even once harboured life. But a new study now says that we're wrong and ancient Mars didn't have any water because not the temperature but the pressure, is that right?
Yes and no.
Good. I at least got halfway, right?
The study doesn't say that it couldn't have had water. It basically implies that it couldn't have held on to water for long periods of time. We know that there's been standing water on Mars at certain periods of time because there are multiple lines of evidence that we've uncovered that show that, and certainly even the photographs from any of the orbiters, you can see clearly there's gullies and sort of water rivulets and so forth.
Yeah,
so
we found water ice.
Yeah,
so.
And there's definitely water ice, and there's no, this study doesn't cast any issues over that either. What the study is actually very interesting the way that they've gone about it, because they've taken a look at the size of craters over an area, and they've said, given the average size of these craters over this area, whatever the area was, I know it was in the equatorial region of Mars, they've said, given a set of circumstances whereby the density, the average density of the atmosphere was this, we should expect to see that only meteorites of this size would even make it to the ground. Because as on Earth, when you see a shooting star, what you're seeing is a meteor burning up in the atmosphere, and most of them, there's several thousands that sort of impact Earth every day or impact our atmosphere. Very, very few of them actually reach the ground. Most of them burn up in the atmosphere because of that bow shock wave that they cause as they pass through the atmosphere, and they get superheated and they just burn up. So for that reason, it's only the larger ones that actually hit the ground. And it's the same on Mars. And what they've said is, if we're seeing an average distribution of craters that are yay big, that would tend to indicate that asteroids or meteorites or whatever that were up to this size managed to reach the ground. And that size is much, much smaller than you would expect of Mars if it had an atmosphere that was thick enough to maintain liquid water. So one of the things about liquid water is, or one of the things about H2O is that it has three states that we see on Earth, because Earth has just the right sort of range of temperature and atmospheric pressure that it can allow all three states to exist. So obviously we get gaseous form in our clouds and so forth are all water vapor. We have ice in forms of snow and land ice, and we've also got water in the oceans and lakes. So it's the atmospheric pressure that allows the water to remain stable as a liquid. Otherwise, it will go straight from an ice to a gas when it boils. So we can even see this on some parts of Earth. For example, if you boil, if you put ice in a billy and boil it at the top of Everest, for example, it will tend to boil straight from ice to steam. It will skip that water stage altogether because there's not enough atmospheric pressure up there to keep it in a water state, which is kind of cool.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, it'll be annoying if you wanted to drink, obviously, but
or a coffee. Oh God.
So, and we also, we touched on the same sort of thing just the other week when we talked about Enceladus, and it's liquid, or these ice geysers that it has, because as soon as the liquid water that's maintained under pressure under the weight of the ice on Enceladus at its south pole, once it's ejected out of that, it suddenly has no air pressure or no pressure that's keeping it as water, so it turns immediately to ice crystals. It doesn't sort of have that liquid stage for long. So this is kind of what they're saying here, that if water was to be on Mars for an extended period of time, it needed a long period of time whereby there was a thick enough atmosphere to maintain water in its liquid state. But this distribution of craters that are so big, yay big, small enough to indicate that small enough impactors were hitting over a fairly large period of time, would tend to indicate that there was not a single long period of stable, thick atmosphere on Mars. So what that indicates then is we know that there has been some periods of liquid water on the surface of Mars at some point in its history, but it's unlikely to have had a warm and wet past like we thought it may have had. It probably just had these, very short periods of denser atmosphere, which may have been caused through greenhouse gas emissions from its volcanic stages, may have been caused by axial tilt. It might have had periods where its axial tilt was dramatically elongated and shifted, which could have led to thicker atmosphere for smaller periods of time. There could have even been impactors that might have been involved. But yeah, it's unlikely, according to this study, if their maths is right, to have had a long period of stable atmosphere.
But there was enough time, obviously, to create things like water channels, which we've seen on Mars.
Correct. And when you think about that, you look at Earth as an analog for this, you can see how rivers can carve fairly significant gullies in relatively short time frames in geological terms. So you might have had.
Well,
periods.
it took a few days to carve the Grand Canyon, I believe.
I think
that's just what I heard.
I thought didn't God just do that in the last 20 seconds of Sunday or something or other? Something like that.
Yes, shit, I forgot about the canyon.
I forgot the canyon. We need something really cool for people to go visit.
Get me my big chisel.
Yeah, sorry, that's just really thrown me off. I'm just picturing God he's bought this big chisel on eBay, wants an excuse to use it.
There's this big lot of ground in the middle of the US. There we go. Boom, boom, boom.
So yeah, we can see, in terms of on Earth, we can see that water can carve fairly significant channels in short periods of time. So it may have had periods of time that were measured in centuries or thousands of years. Or millennia, if you like, which were enough to cause these gullies, but there perhaps were no standing oceans, for example, on Mars.
So that would have basically sort of ruled out life as we know it anyway, developing.
It would certainly make it much, much more difficult for life to have evolved unless there were subsurface conditions that were favourable. So, if you can picture conditions such as that we've discussed on Enceladus or perhaps on Europa and certainly on Earth, where you've got ocean trenches that have got
volcanic vents.
Yeah, exactly. That are pumping out these minerals and so forth. If those vents existed perhaps in underground water-filled caverns on Mars, well, that might allow for life to form. But then we're putting Mars in the category of any other rocky body. Just the fact that it happens to sit within the Goldilocks zone isn't enough. It needs a stable atmosphere as well, and part of having a stable atmosphere also means having enough gravity to hold on to an atmosphere, and there's all these other things that come into play. But it's certainly an interesting study because it may now have dropped the odds of us finding evidence of past life on Mars significantly.
Mm.
Yeah, I like the study, but it just seems to have an awful lot of assumptions about it that, we assume that the impactors would need to be this size and everything. And I love the way that they've gone about it. It's sort of turning the question on its head and looking at could there be a pressure and all that for it. I just think it's still just one little data point that maybe
Absolutely.
It needs a lot more
certainly
evidence to
that
back
being
it up.
said, like if you're going back to, sorry to interrupt. If you're going back to what we're talking about Earth and the tectonic plates moving, and that's the reason why we can't see old craters and things like that. Mars doesn't seem to have that problem, so we've got a fairly good record, I think, of the size of craters on Mars. And if you know what I mean, if you're going to, I don't know.
See, we as Shane's pointed out, we do have the ability on Mars to see much further back in time because it hasn't had an atmosphere for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it also hasn't had tectonic movement. It hasn't had lava flows for a very long time. So as a result, a lot of the evidence is still there. So we've got craters, for example, that are partially obscured by water trenches. We've got others that are not, and they're around the same size. And what this indicates is that for them to be that size, the atmosphere has to have been a certain density to allow that through. And if things that have impacted Mars way earlier in its geological time frame versus things that have hit Mars way later but are around the same size, it gives us a very long period of time, potentially, where at least in all of those time frames it's had thin atmosphere. What it does seem to indicate is that if Mars, we know Mars had liquid water at some point. Whether it was a short period in its total life is really the question. And it sounds like it may well have been shorter than perhaps we've thought in the past, just because there is so much evidence of water on Mars. But what I do like about because I tried to pick holes in this as well. My immediate thought was, well, how do they know? They've just picked a small area.
Yeah, what would they know?
What have they done with their science? They've looked at a relatively small area on the equatorial region of Mars, but they picked it, from what I read about the area that they picked that region for a reason, because there is evidence of water in that region, and also it's there's physics that come into play in terms of the angle of approach of impactors and so forth, which are more easily calculated in that equatorial region and cancelled out than things that hit from in the top and the poles and so forth. It's interesting, and I think what strikes me about it is this one of these things that I always love about stories like this is it's something that is a little bit out of left field, and it's there's so many ways that you can go about getting data, and I just love that this is yet another one, which is very cool.
Like I said, it's that thinking outside the box thing. I'm just very skeptical of it because it runs contrary to my preconceived ideas. So I refuse to believe.
Spoken like Jenny McCarthy herself.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Shane, because that brings us nicely along to our next topic, which is how the Verve got it right and the drugs don't work in the case of the Tamiflu vaccine.
See,
you like that?
That's poetry,
mate.
Mate.
Seriously, it's like 20 years old.
Yeah, but so is a lot of things.
No. I'm just having a few moments where songs that were popular when I was a teenager, and oh god, I'm old. Yeah. So I just thought I'd share the love.
Did you hear Kurt Cobain died 20 years ago? It's amazing. Anyway.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing at someone's death. That's horrible.
It's all right. It's Kurt Cobain.
Yes, that is true.
So the UK government is sitting on £500 million worth of, well, not useless, but less effective Tamiflu.
It's not just the British government that's stockpiled this medication. It's our government, and I'm pretty sure the US government's been stockpiling it too. And it's all on the promise that Tamiflu is a revolutionary antiviral drug that helps cut the severity of flu symptoms and stops it from spreading. However, it's turned out that a lot of the information that has been released that's very positive about this has all been sort of, I wouldn't say secretive clinical trials, but trials that haven't been published. So it turns out that I think about there's a review that was published called the Cochrane Review, which was basically talking about the effectiveness of Tamiflu, and one of the researchers noted, wait a minute, only two clinical trial results have been released of this 10 that you're talking about. And this set off a big sort of chain of events whereby there's a great write-up of this in The Guardian by
Ben Goldacre.
Ben Goldacre.
It's a brilliant
it's basically like a litany of, oh, what the hell. you read this and it's like, whoa, okay, this is very. But as the article has says at in the big message, it shows just how well this system works in a way, because this was picked up. This wasn't just
no, it works, but it's belatedly that we find out that it's.
Of course, but the point is that it could have been swept on the carpet entirely, and it wasn't.
Sure.
Someone figured out that, wait a minute, the data that we're using is a bit questionable here. Let's go back and check this. Roche, of course, who are the producers of Tamiflu, have been reluctant, as you would have been if you've spent a lot of money and a lot of marketing on, touting your great antiviral drug. But it turns out that what we actually can see from the results is that Tamiflu is not as effective as an antiviral as they have said. And this is after governments have been stockpiling it. People from the EU European Union medical representatives have been really pushing it and saying, yeah, we need this drug. This is great. So, look, the end result is that, okay, Tamiflu is a bit crap at what it's supposed to do. It's not as great as everybody was saying it was. But at the same time...
So is it crap, though, or is it effective but not as effective?
Not as effective. It doesn't, some of the things, put it this way, it wouldn't stop a pandemic. And it probably wouldn't even stop a mass, a lower grade kind of, strain infection, something like, what's lower than a pandemic?
Epidemic.
Thank you, epidemic.
Yes, that's the one.
My brain's not working either.
Apparently, it may reduce the duration of flu symptoms by up to half a day. So, wow.
I don't know. When you've had the flu for 2 weeks, that half a day starts to get pretty
and apparently there is no evidence that it reduces hospital admissions or complications. But there are side effects, including nausea. And
as a man flu sufferer, I would probably get, 10 minutes relief then with this?
Half a day. Half a day.
Well, a man flu is more severe, though.
I mean, as people have said, look, this sort of shows there are massive flaws here in drug regulation, in the current system of drug regulation, and also evaluation of drugs and clinical trials, and how we then, take a clinical trial and say, these are the results from it, therefore this works. Here's the marketing, go nuts. There's and it's understandable because there's a lot of money involved in this, and there's also a big lag time between, development and market. So companies are really pushing to try to get these things out, and of course this is going to bring up all the things about you're a corporate shill and all the rest of it. But in some ways, I'm not saying I can understand where Roche is coming from, but I can see why it happened.
I think the other problem as well is that the practice is so unbelievably widespread.
Yes.
It's not technically falsifying data. What they basically do is that clinical trial wasn't quite right.
Yeah. They withheld.
So basically, you end up with a publication bias that can be, statistically detected. And it happens in a whole bunch of different classes of drugs, which is a real worry. People are calling for a full overhaul of that particular system.
There's certainly, and the article drew attention to the fact that there's been people, criticising this particular drug's efficacy, right back to when it was first introduced. Because, back in 2009 when there was, they had that, which flu was it? Was it the swine flu?
Swine flu.
Or the bird flu? I can't remember. That's it. It was the H1N1, wasn't it? That's it. Back then, there was obviously, certainly in the case of the UK, the British government were keen to be seen to be taking some action. There were all these, as you've already said, guys, all the lobbyists and all the pharmaceutical representatives saying, we've got this drug that could, potentially hold off this third wave of the virus that we're expecting to come back and be more deadly because it would have changed.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, this is the thing that the whole system is based on a market demand, situation. And as you said, Shane, there's so much money that's built into this stuff.
And so much money to lose as well. It's not
absolutely. It's multi-billion-dollar industry here.
Yeah.
It's really, really disturbing, I think, because if you can't trust drug companies, I mean, who can you trust? It's really hard.
We sort of jest about this, but in a way, if you're not a libertarian and don't believe in free market economics, you make a very good point. Like you're basically asking the market to look after the people's best interests, which, if you're not a crazy libertarian, you know it doesn't. And sorry for any libertarians who listen to this but get stuffed. Anyway, the point is that
that's fair.
The point is that does this mean that that system, like the actual detection system, is not at fault because people pick this up, relatively quickly? I mean, it could have gone on for years and years and years, and it didn't.
Yes.
The point is, though, that the actual whole system of drug development to drug marketing to drug production, is that something that actually needs to be totally overhauled? And it won't be in our lifetime, let's face it. But it's one of those things that, it is so, like, if we, as a species and all the rest of it, if we're looking for the best outcome, do we trust big money to do this? Or do we trust governments? And it's... In
my asinine and slightly uninformed opinion, I mean, there's sort of, two things that spring to mind is that, Ben Goldacre's suggestion, which you're probably familiar with, of having people register clinical trials formally before they run the trial and having that as a requirement. Yes. Every trial must be registered ahead of time, and thus you have to report the results of every trial.
That would go a long way to... That
would go a long way towards preventing this. But also I think a lot of the expectations of the money that is invested in pharmaceuticals. I mean, I invest in pharmaceuticals. I'm going to get rich. And you just sit there knowing what goes on in a lab and the testing that happens. You realise that this is a shot in the dark.
Of course.
That most of this that comes up with hey, this target drug, this might be really good. A lot of the time it's not going to be. A lot of the time it's not going to do what you expect it to do or what you want it to do. And that's the process of discovery.
So horrific.
Well, all the side effects are horrific, and you grow like 8 extra limbs and an extra pair of eyes or, something crazy like that, but that never happens.
And then Shane will hate you because you've got 8 limbs.
There really is no easy solution. I don't think. It's so complicated and so complex. I mean, even if you take the pre-registering all trials and that, well, all that really does is ship a lot of your testing to China or to somewhere where they're not going to enforce that, where that policing isn't going to do that. And then it's going to be even... yes, it's extremely cynical.
No, because you're still going to have your local, FDA, Therapeutic Goods Administration type groups of people who are actually going to vet your trials.
Yeah, and even and if that's the case, if your system is stringent enough, if you try to ship it off to somewhere dodgy, you can always say, well, in that case, you can't market it in our country. Get stuff.
Well,
and they've lost
that is it. You can sell it somewhere else.
Yeah.
But you'll lose. If people are doing the right thing, and I like to think they do sometimes. You won't get a big market in the Western countries, for example. And I'm drawing very broad strokes here, but I think that's kind of the idea.
I think the other thing as well is as Kate mentioned, the publishing bias, which is we've discussed so many times on the show that the journals tend to publish positive results, not negative ones. And there's no register, there's nowhere to go to look for these things typically. And there's new groups that have popped up to try and address this and make the publishing of results an open thing and so forth. But it's still there's this very strong publishing bias for the affirmative.
Yeah, there's a lot of inertia to overcome to get those things off the ground. Yeah. I think it will work, but I think it's going to take a lot of push.
Yes. And it's a matter of the coming right back to the scientists themselves pushing, rather than the drunk company, now
that you mention it,
having all the say, and the journals having all the say.
I definitely recommend that everyone actually goes to the link to Ben Goldacre's article in The Guardian, have a read of that, and if you're still interested, I definitely recommend his book, Big Pharma.
Bad Pharma.
Bad Pharma.
And
Big
Bad
Pharma
Science.
is probably a different. Yeah, Bad Science as well is brilliant. So follow up on his work if that's something
and his talks.
interests you.
He's got a lot of talks that you can get on.
Yeah, TED Talk he did was great.
TED Talks, which are really good.
Cool. Let's just quickly wrap up. Shane, do you want to tell us whether or not Stradivarius violins really are worth all that money?
I love this story because this is a story that was done. I think we did this story about
I'm pretty sure
2 years ago. And it was the very first lot of tests where they were testing Stradivarius violins against run-of-the-mill, made in this century already.
Yeah, high quality,
this
but
decade violins. Now, if you don't know what Stradivarius violin is, they were made by legendary Italian violin maker Antonio Stradivari, and they go back. They're sort of made in the 1700s. They're prized by violinists all over the world, and they go for a lot of money. Like we're talking 45 million to 50 million sort of,
Good God.
Yeah. It's
well,
okay, that's the maximum.
One of them is
price
going to be
of
auctioned in June.
There's going to be
and
a
they're
vial that's going
asking
to be
for a minimum of 45
Sorry, I
million.
keep talking over you.
That's all right.
Anyway, we're talking millions of dollars, and usually they're kept in either as prized possessions in some rich violinist's house or as museum pieces, and they're loaned out to only the best violinists because they're considered to be instruments of great quality. However, this study about 2 years ago did a sort of a blindish test where they took a Stradivarius violin and another old Italian violin made by another producer. I can't remember his name was, but a sort of the same sort of quality.
The Gaineri?
The Gaineri, yeah. And then put them alongside two or three new ones and got violinists to play them. They did this in a sort of a darkened room so they couldn't necessarily tell what violin they were picking up. And they played them blind and they said, now, what do you think you played? Oh, I played a Stradivarius. It was beautiful. No, you didn't. You played a new one. And this was actually, as far as I was concerned, it was quite convincing because, you play the violin for a little while and you're basically, you go with a preconceived notion that you're going to play a great, ancient violin, and you got this confirmation bias going, which is what we were talking about previously. However, this was criticised no end by a lot of people. It said, this is like testing a Ferrari in a parking lot, was one exact quote. You can't.
I do like the analogy. It is a good analogy.
Well, yes and no, because
I don't know if it's actually really going to.
Put it this way: if I had a Ferrari and my crappy car in a parking lot, I could still tell the Ferrari was better.
That's a good point.
Okay, but could you tell a Ferrari from a Dodge Viper?
Okay, probably not. No, that's probably true. Okay. All right, fair enough. The analogy is not bad. Anyway, so this researcher, I think Claudia Fritz, has done it again. And this time she took a lot of those concerns into sort of play, and she basically got a whole lot of these violins, the Stradivarius, the Del Guzzo violins, and some newer ones, which are still, as Ed said, great quality, had people play them in concert halls and in houses where, houses that are known for their great acoustics and for, known for people to play these violins and, enjoy them and all the rest of it. And it turns out that after a very lengthy sort of process of rating them and saying, okay, what did you think of the timbre, the overall playing quality, the projection, all that sort of stuff, what do you think you played and how, etc. And again, the old violins rated significantly lower than the newer violins. So, and again, this is a sort of a blind test. They didn't know what they were picking up. But it's sort of fairly clear that not only, all these articles I read about this say that, okay, they couldn't tell the difference between the Stradivarius violins and the new violins. I would go further and say, to be honest, it looks like the old violins sounded rubbish compared to the new ones.
Relatively rubbish.
I'm just going to put
still gorgeous violin.
I'm going to throw that out there, and I can understand. I collect old guitars, and I understand the sort of the sort of nostalgia thing of picking up an old guitar and looking at it and saying, "Look, this has been through so much." Etc. Etc. But
I think there's a very strong emotional setup.
It's a mess, yeah. And like a lot of people have come out and said after this, it's not about necessarily. I think there were a few comments at the end of this Ed Yong article which basically said, look, as a violinist, I would like an old violin just for the pure experience of having one.
Sure.
But if I was going to tour with one, I'd pick a new one because A, it's less valuable, B, it probably sounds a bit better, and yeah, I really like this study because it's sort of taking that old sort of snake oil argument, if you like, and subjecting it to a proper test. And in this case, I think this was a very good test. And again, read this article by Ed Yong because he explains it a lot better than I have. And he goes through every single sort of step that these researchers took to cut out any criticism.
They were so thorough, weren't they?
Very thorough.
They had scents to cover up the smell of the wood and everything. They had
everything.
Blindfolds, all sorts of stuff.
It was crazy. And again, most people were wrong, and most people sort of took it on their chin and said, "Oh, well, I was wrong." There you go.
I think, but they were professional musicians that were testing it.
Yes.
So people who have been using high quality but probably modern violins for a long time and were used to that sound.
Maybe.
And the way they turn, and then they pick up this one. Well, it sounds different. Whether it's better or worse is a subjective thing, of course.
It is, but I suppose if you break it down to those categories that they broke it down to, which were things like timbre, playability, projection, loudness under the ear, which is a very specific one, or as specific as you can get. Articulation is a little bit more nebulous. I mean, what the hell does that mean? That will, but yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, like I was just, this sort of reminds me of something. I bought a new guitar recently, and it's an old it's a mid-90s guitar that uses very old pickups, and I plugged the damn thing in, and I swear to Christ, the feedback that I got from that was insane, because they're microphonic pickups. They squeal like anything, but
that's a good thing.
But no, not when you're playing them. You don't play them.
Possibly a bit problematic.
Yeah. So, but as soon as you play it, for me, it was like, oh, this is brilliant. But then I thought about it later, and I thought, to be honest, if I didn't know that this was this guitar, would I have actually thought that? I don't know. It's a very subjective thing. When you're a musician, it's a very subjective thing. It's not just the sound you're making. It's also about the history of the instrument that you're using, or what
how you feel holding it, playing it, all those things.
Yeah.
I think we kind of made the analogy last time too. It's a lot like wine. A $150 bottle of wine, or even a $3,000 bottle of wine.
Oh, God.
Oh, Barry.
For those of you following Australian politics, you'll get that reference.
You will be here all week.
The expensive bottle of wines may or may not taste different to a $10 bottle of wine if you have no idea where they came from, sort of thing. But if you're told one is more expensive, and if you're in a fancy restaurant and on a special day or whatever, all these additional factors come in to make it the best wine you've ever had.
Yeah.
But it's so much subjective, nebulous kind of feedback and impressions that you get.
And again, knowing that, like back to the violins, knowing that something is worth X million dollars, you are likely, this plays into the whole myth of the sound of it. Why are they so expensive? Oh, they must be good. And obviously, the Stradivarius violins, like this researcher has said, they're not crappy instruments. They were beautifully made. They still hold up, even though they're hundreds of years old. They sound good. But in terms of, this idea of they sound better than anything that's produced in this century, no. And it makes sense to me because, we're talking about old wood that has, it doesn't have the same kind of tonal qualities as new wood does, and it never will because...
but it was built to last.
Because back in the day...
I'm looking at the moment at a site that tells you where all the Stradivarius violins are. So it's got apparently they've all got names, all of the violins. And,
he only made a few. I don't think he made that many.
There seem to, just at a glance on this site, there seem to be at least 150 of them, maybe more.
Okay, but for a lot of violins,
the span, the first one on this list was made in 1666, and the last one was made in 1737. So there's many years of making these damn things.
Yeah.
But it has actually got notes on the history of each one of these violins. It's quite intriguing, and you can see why people, as you're saying, Shane, get so wrapped up in the mystique of it. There's one here that I'm looking at, formerly owned by the King of Spain.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty cool, even if it was
there's a certain
doorstop.
There's a historical gravitas to it, and that you can't get with obviously a violin made last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one here. There's one sold in 2006 at Christie's, New York, for US $3.54 million after 5 minutes of bidding.
I have 3.54 million. Do I hear 3.55? I am amazingly not surprised. I think we've reached the limit in this room.
Well, I mean, if this viola that I was talking about goes for 45 million as is expected, that will be the most expensive violin ever gone under the hammer.
Actually, musical instrument, I think.
Sorry, musical instrument gone under the hammer.
Yes.
And again, look, if you're looking at this as a collector, all right, whatever. But in terms of saying that this is worth this price tag as a violinist, I like to think any violinist would just, even the most pretentious one, would say no.
Yeah, I'll take the $43 million one.
Yeah,
thanks.
I think since most violinists are probably not rolling in cash, most of them would say no.
Yeah, guessing that.
It's not. I don't think it's a really lucrative career. I'm just saying.
All right, let's wrap this up. Before we leave, we've got a little announcement to make.
Okay.
Keep the 31st of May free if you're in Melbourne or can get to Melbourne, because that's going to be our 150th episode. To celebrate, we're going to be doing it live at the State Library of Victoria at 7 o'clock. Details will be on our website soon. But it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. We're going to have comedian and scientist Kobe Smith is going to be emceeing the night for us. Dr. Helen Maynard Casely will be flying down to join us on the panel. And malaria researcher Dr. Crystal Evans will be giving, a keynote speech for about half an hour or so beforehand. So like I said, keep an eye on the website, scienceontop.com, for more details about that. If you can make it to State Library, or if you can make it to Melbourne, that'd be really good. So looking forward to it. Penny, Shane, Kate, Lucas, thank you all for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
And as always, we'll have all the links up on the website, scienceontop.com/144. Jump on and leave us some feedback. Like to know what you think about the show. The upstanding members wrote and produced our theme music, and we'll be back again next week putting science on top of the agenda. Join us then.
I have only one belief. My belief is that it's either a terrific sounding fiddle or it's not a terrific sounding fiddle. And so, having played many, many different fiddles, I've played Strads that sound absolutely glorious, and I've played Strads that really don't sound very well at all. Under my ear and in a hall.